You felt it, didn't you? That sudden, inexplicable tightness in your chest. The quiet, uncomfortable urge hovering at the edge of your mind to scroll past this video. Do not ignore that sensation. That hesitation is not random. And it is certainly not yours. It is your ego's built-in security system, a literal Archonic interference panicking at the frequency of the truth you are about to encounter. The truth always arrives quietly, ensuring the unready will ignore it. The ready, however, will pause. For years, you have been spoon-fed a deeply sophisticated, weaponized lie. You have been conditioned to believe that your anxiety, your perceived flaws, and your fractured reality are mechanical errors you must relentlessly work to fix. You buy the esoteric books. You attempt the Jung shadow work. You meditate to heal the hollow spaces inside you. Yet, notice the patterns. The harder you try to repair your life, the heavier the suffocation becomes. The scaffolding of your existence is actively decaying, and your constant, frantic hammering is only accelerating the collapse. Consider this. What if your desperate, agonizing need to fix yourself is the exact mechanism unlocking you permanently inside the matrix? What if your relentless pursuit of healing is, in reality, the disease itself? Every ounce of conscious effort you pour into changing your circumstances acts as a magnetic anchor, pulling your frequency deeper into a stroboscopic loop of despair. You are not failing at self-improvement. You are simply succeeding at your own self-imprisonment. The skip reflex you felt moments ago was your programmed identity fighting for its survival. It knows that once you understand the forbidden physics of your own effort, its parasitic grip on your mind dissolves. Awakening feels like a profound unraveling because it is the death of the self you have been exhausting yourself to maintain. If you are tired of suffocating in this spiritual hamster wheel, if you are finally ready to stop fixing and start observing the collapse of the illusion, stay right here. Subscribe and join the awakened in the comments below. We are about to strip bare the quantum mechanics of your suffering. To understand why your relentless pursuit of self-improvement is structurally failing, we must look at the forbidden physics of consciousness pioneered by Itzhak Bentov. The physical universe does not operate on human morality, karmic fairness, or good intentions. It operates strictly on vibration, resonant frequencies, and the mechanical laws of pendulums. You have been taught to treat dimensional misalignments as if they were broken mechanical parts inside your mind. But consciousness is not a machine you can repair. It is a highly sensitive, fluctuating field. Consider this. When you identify a psychological flaw or a deep-rooted trauma within yourself, your immediate instinct is to forcefully try to fix it. In the esoteric mechanics of this reality, this is the equivalent of violently applying kinetic energy to a massive, wild pendulum. Pushing against a heavy pendulum does not stop its motion. It mathematically guarantees that the pendulum will swing back at you with equal and devastating violence. The harder you fight your shadow, the heavier its counterstrike becomes. Stop trying to heal your deep-rooted wounds through the sheer, exhausting force of conscious will. Imagine your consciousness as a biological radio currently tuned to a frequency of lack, anxiety, or deep existential suffering. You desperately want to hear the music of peace, so you frantically smash the dials, twisting the tuning knobs with exhausted, bloody hands. You are not changing the station. You are only amplifying the static. The universe does not answer to frantic hands. It only responds to matching resonance. Your relentless effort to fix your inner world creates the exact vibrational static that keeps you deaf to the frequency of true liberation. This is because your ego, the artificial construct managing your identity, thrives on the heavy friction of becoming something better. It feeds on the struggle. The constant, agonizing journey of healing is its ultimate survival mechanism. If you ever actually stopped trying, if you ever truly arrived at the destination of being completely whole, the ego would simply starve to death. Watch what happens in your physical body during these moments of obsessive problem-solving and forced healing. Feel the sudden tightening of your jaw, the shallow, restricted breathing in your chest, the nervous, acidic flutter in your stomach. That is not the sensation of genuine healing or spiritual growth. That biological discomfort is the precise signature of Archonic interference. Your physical vessel is giving you recalibration signals, warning you that your desperate attempts to fix yourself are actually generating the heavy viscosity that traps you. Let that sink in. This is the ultimate paradox of seeking that they deliberately removed from modern spiritual teachings. The ego does not resist what is genuinely toxic or bad for us. It is perfectly comfortable in familiar decay. It aggressively resists what is right. Because the ultimate truth requires total surrender and the death of the self. We run toward the hollow illusions we think we want, while simultaneously running away in absolute terror from the stillness we actually need to evolve. Bentov understood this stroboscopic truth. Every time you intensely declare that a personal problem must be fixed, you carve its existence infinitely deeper into your current reality. You are actively validating the reality of the wound. By actively fighting your perceived darkness, you are providing it with the exact kinetic energy it needs to solidify its mass. You become a master architect of your own continuous suffering, building the invisible walls of your prison with every self-help protocol you obsessively consume. You are hand-feeding the wild pendulum the exact momentum it requires to keep striking you down, over and over again. Every time you try to forcibly shift your reality, you create a dangerous timeline pivot point that loops right back to your trauma. You think you are ascending, but you are merely spinning the hamster wheel of the matrix at a much higher, more exhausting velocity. The more you try to push the darkness away, the more you trap yourself in its gravitational pull. To comprehend the true depth of this trap, we must move beyond psychology and step into the cold, mechanical reality of quantum physics. The universe, at its core, is not made of solid matter. It is a shimmering field of infinite probability. It remains in a state of pure, fluid potential until a conscious observer forces it to take a definite shape. This is the fundamental law of the quantum realm. When you obsessively focus on a problem within yourself, you become the observer violently collapsing the wave. Picture this in your mind's eye. Imagine a vast, rippling pool of dark water in a pitch-black room, representing the infinite timelines available to you. The moment you turn on the harsh, glaring flashlight of your anxiety and point it directly at a specific ripple, your trauma, your lack, your perceived inadequacy, that section of the water instantly freezes into solid, immovable ice. The fluid potential becomes a heavy, stagnant reality. This is the quantum freeze. By constantly monitoring your psychological state to see if you're healed yet, you are forcing the quantum field to continuously render the exact coordinates of your brokenness. You are commanding the holographic projection to maintain the image of your suffering. The universe is a perfect, emotionless mirror. It does not judge your desires. It simply reflects your focus. When your focus is entirely consumed by the act of fixing a flaw, the universe obediently freezes that flaw into your permanent timeline. Watch what happens in your physical body when you desperately try to force a manifestation, or when you aggressively try to psychoanalyze a deep emotional wound. Notice the immediate tightening of the chest, the heavy suffocation pressing down on your lungs, the sudden, exhausting drain of your life force. That heavy viscosity you feel in the air around you is the quantum field literally freezing. It is locking your frequency into the very trauma you are frantically trying to escape. You cannot heal a wound by continuously staring at it under a microscopic lens. The act of intense, desperate observation prevents the false scaffolding of your reality from shifting or dissolving. You are, quite literally, holding the heavy concrete walls of your own prison in place through your hypervigilance. Your focused attention provides the necessary density for the illusion to survive. You are not trapped by your past. You are trapped by your relentless observation of it. If this transmission is currently causing a productive irritation within you, if the program skip reflex is screaming for you to leave, but your deeper soul memory is forcing you to listen, then you are finally ready to break the freeze. Hit the subscribe button now. Join the few who possess the courage to strip bare the illusions of this matrix and step into true sovereignty. We are dismantling the architecture of decay, one frequency at a time. The modern healing journey is often a highly sophisticated, disguised form of Archonic interference. It is a brilliant psychological cage designed to convince you that you are a perpetual project under construction, forever hollow and incomplete. This keeps your consciousness trapped in a state of preconscious awareness, always anticipating a future timeline where you are finally fixed. While completely abandoning your power in the present moment, you are chasing a horizon that mathematically cannot be reached. Consider this. Every single time you declare to yourself or the world, "I need to heal," the resonant field of the universe hears the underlying frequency. "I am currently broken." Because the quantum field acts as a perfect resonant mirror, it collapses the wave of infinite potential into the solid, heavy reality of a broken person who needs healing. You are unintentionally commanding the matrix to keep you sick, so that you can continue the identity of the seeker. This is the hidden architecture of your continuous decay. The more you violently fight the quicksand of your own mind, the faster you sink into its depths. Your energetic struggles, your forced positive affirmations, your desperate late-night journaling, they all emit a dense, heavy frequency of lack. They broadcast a loud, continuous signal of resistance. And in this stroboscopic holographic universe, resistance is the exact quantum glue that binds the painful illusion together. Let that sink in for a moment. The ultimate triumph of the control system is convincing the prisoner that they must build their own key out of the very materials of their cell. You cannot solve a dimensional and vibrational distortion using the frantic, analytical tools of the ego that created it in the first place. The analytical mind is the wild pendulum. The mind's need to control is the exact source of the freeze. To understand why your reality constantly demands that you fix yourself, you must look at the hidden economy of this dimension. This society's obsession with relentless self-improvement is not a cultural accident. It is a structural requirement of the control matrix. You have been conditioned to believe that striving for healing is a noble pursuit. But in the cold mechanics of energy, it is a mechanism of harvest. The system feeds entirely on the friction of human effort. The esoteric researcher Robert Monroe called this harvested energy loosh. When you struggle, when you aggressively fight your own shadow, you create a massive amount of energetic friction. This psychological friction generates a dense, low-frequency electromagnetic emission, a heavy emotional smog. Your anxiety, your deep existential guilt, and your desperate, exhausting need to become a healed person are quite literally the food supply for parasitic, non-physical entities. Consider the metaphor of viscosity. Imagine the space around you is not empty air, but a fluid medium. When your consciousness is at rest, the fluid is then like clear water. But the exact moment you start aggressively trying to fix a psychological flaw, the fluid violently thickens. The viscosity of your reality drastically increases. You are no longer moving freely. You are suddenly swimming in thick, suffocating psychic tar, trapped by your own resistance. Picture this thick, heavy tar clinging to your energetic body. The harder you thrash, panic, and effortfully try to escape this tar, the more kinetic energy you transfer directly into the trap. Your desperate, frantic movements generate heat, friction, and profound despair. This is exactly what the Archonic interference is designed to provoke. The system does not want you to fail entirely, but it certainly never wants you to succeed. It wants you endlessly, exhaustingly striving. Watch what happens in your body right now as you process this forbidden truth. Pay close attention to your physical vessel. Do you feel a sudden, defensive heat rising in your neck? Does your stomach tightly contract with the terrifying realization that your most noble spiritual efforts have been weaponized against you? That visceral somatic reaction is your ego, your internal matrix agent, panicking because its cover has just been blown. We are relentlessly taught that constantly working on our flaws makes us virtuous. But in the hermetic laws of energy mechanics, your perceived virtue is merely a high-yield form. The egregore loves a self-aware, spiritually seeking individual who is perpetually trying to cleanse their trauma. Why? Because the relentless seeker is always generating the highest quality, most refined louche. You are paying a voluntary energy tax disguised as a path to enlightenment. Let that sink in for a moment. Your continuous psychological suffering is not a glitch in the simulation. It is the primary export. You are biologically wired to stay asleep through the very mechanism of hoping for a better tomorrow. Hope is the ultimate Archonic trap because it keeps your consciousness permanently deferred to a future timeline. It creates a perpetual state of not enough in the present, generating a continuous, bleeding frequency of lack. This is the hidden architecture of your own decay. When you fight a pendulum, you feed it. When you fight your anxiety, you feed the egregore responsible for initiating it. You become a highly efficient biological battery, plugged directly into a stroboscopic loop of self-improvement that mathematically can never reach a state of total stillness. You are generating the exact heavy viscosity that prevents your soul from lifting out of this density. The ultimate rebellion, therefore, is never about fighting the system. The ultimate rebellion is absolute, terrifying stillness. It is the conscious refusal to generate any more friction. When you stop trying to be healed, you instantly stop producing the heavy emission of louche. The parasites in your mind begin to starve. The false scaffolding of your perceived flaws collapses because you are no longer supplying the kinetic energy required to hold it together. Consider this paradox as we prepare to break the cycle. To escape a dimensional prison, you must completely stop rattling the bars. Frantically rattling the bars only proves to the unseen guards that you still fundamentally believe in the reality of the cage. If you want to dissolve the Archonic implants and reset your frequency, you must unconditionally withdraw your energetic participation from the exhausting drama of your own healing. How do you escape a dimensional trap that actively tightens every single time you struggle? The answer is profoundly counterintuitive and deeply terrifying to the human ego. You must cultivate the forbidden art of absolute and compromising stillness. In the esoteric physics of Itzhak Bentov, this is known as accessing the still point, the infinitesimally small, silent space between the swing of the cosmic pendulum. It is the absolute point where consciousness becomes reality, but only if you stop forcing it. When you reach the still point, you are no longer feeding the matrix with the heavy friction of your relentless self-improvement. You are no longer spinning the dials of your biological radio in a desperate panic. You simply allow the static to exist without claiming it as your permanent identity. The wild pendulum of your trauma, deprived of your reactionary kinetic energy, slowly begins to lose its momentum. The stroboscopic loop of your suffering starts to mathematically decay because you have stopped funding its existence. Pause right now and scan your physical vessel. Watch what happens in your body when I tell you to completely stop trying to heal yourself. Notice the immediate, suffocating panic rising in your throat. Feel the violent, electrical flutter of resistance in your nervous system. That is not your soul objecting. That is your ego, the internal warden of your psychological prison, screaming in sheer terror. It realizes that you are about to cut off its primary food supply. To execute this dimensional jailbreak, you must implement what we call the linger test. The next time you feel a massive spike of anxiety, or the heavy, crushing weight of an old psychological wound, do absolutely nothing. Do not journal about it. Do not attempt to psychoanalyze its origins. Do not violently force a positive affirmation over it to numb the pain. You must allow the raw, unedited frequency of that emotion to simply linger in your physical space. This is the creation of a recognition window. You are opening a specific time frame where you strictly observe the Archonic interference without stepping into the ring to fight it. Imagine the anxiety is a dark, heavy storm cloud passing through the room. You do not try to push the cloud out the window. Doing so would only increase the viscosity of the room. You simply sit in the chair and watch the cloud exist. You become the cold, detached observer of the decay. Let that sink in. In the mechanics of quantum physics, by refusing to aggressively analyze or fix the emotion, you are refusing to collapse the wave function. You are preventing the quantum freeze. You leave the energy in a state of fluid potential because you are not shining the harsh, judgmental flashlight of your ego onto the trauma. It cannot freeze into a permanent, heavy timeline. The emotional tar loses its thickness, and the physical reality around you begins to literally lighten. This protocol is a lethal weapon against the egregore that feeds on your despair. When you observe your pain without reacting to it, you stop generating the dense, low-frequency loosh that the system requires to survive. You are intentionally starving the parasitic attachments in your mind. Without your continuous energetic friction to sustain them, the false scaffolding holding your perceived flaws together structurally fails. The illusion collapses under its own hollow weight, simply because you stopped holding it up. Be warned. This process is deeply uncomfortable. The ego equates this absolute stillness with literal death. Carl Jung understood that the shadow self will deliberately manufacture external chaos and synchronicities just to force you back into a state of reactive panic. It will use your deepest fears against you, projecting them onto the holographic mirror of your reality, begging you to fight back. Because the moment you fight back, you belong to the Matrix once again. You must endure the void's revenge. You must become perfectly comfortable with the terrifying, hollow sensation of not being a project under construction. This is the ultimate, forbidden alchemy. You are transmuting the heavy lead of your anxiety into the weightless gold of sovereignty, simply by refusing to participate in the reaction. You step entirely out of the timeline of decay. You become a ghost in the machine, undetectable to the Archons because you no longer emit the frequency of struggle. The ultimate sovereign act is not fighting the demiurge. It is existing quietly between two heartbeats. It is navigating the in-between state where the matrix has no underlying code. Practice the linger test. Master the still point. Let the false structures of your identity rot and fall away in the silence. When you finally stop trying to fix the illusion, you will realize, with a sudden, shattering clarity, that you were never actually broken in the first place. When you finally stop feeding the wild pendulum of self-improvement, do not expect an immediate sensation of overwhelming peace. Expect a terrifying, structural collapse. The moment you completely withdraw your energetic participation from the Archonic loosh trap, the false scaffolding of your identity begins to violently decay. The roles you have desperately played, the spiritual masks you have worn, the carefully constructed persona of the healing individual, they will all suddenly sit heavily on your shoulders like damp clothes that no longer fit. This is not a psychological regression. This is the architecture of your prison physically falling apart. Watch what happens in your body during this profound phase of disruption. You may feel a sudden, hollow-dropping sensation in your stomach, or a cold, creeping emptiness expanding in your chest. The Matrix is sending you desperate recalibration signals, begging you to panic and start aggressively fixing yourself again. It desperately wants you to misinterpret this newfound silent void as depression, apathy, or failure. Do not fall for the ego's skip reflex. That terrifying emptiness is not a void of meaning. It is the literal clearing of the heavy, suffocating viscosity that once trapped your soul. Imagine standing inside a towering, decaying building that you have spent your entire life frantically trying to repair. The walls are rotting. The foundation is sinking into the earth. Yet you kept hammering, kept painting over the mold, terrified of what would happen if you stopped. The observer's detachment protocol is the exact moment you simply drop the hammer and calmly walk out the front door. Behind you, the building violently collapses into dust. The destruction of your false reality is an absolute, unavoidable prerequisite for your sovereign existence. You cannot be reborn if you refuse to let your manufactured avatar die. This is the ultimate, forbidden secret of Itzhak Bentov and the ancient alchemists. True, dimensional sovereignty is never achieved by winning the brutal war against your shadow self. It is achieved by realizing the battlefield itself is a holographic projection strictly designed to harvest your kinetic energy. When you finally step off the battlefield, when you embrace the stroboscopic blink of the still point, the quantum freeze shatters. The heavy, stagnant ice of your reality melts back into the fluid wave of infinite potential. The universe is no longer mechanically forced to reflect your brokenness, simply because you are no longer broadcasting the dense frequency of a victim desperately needing a cure. Consider the sheer magnitude of this realization. For your entire life, the demiurge has convinced you that your deepest wounds were your most defining characteristics. It weaponized your pure desire for wholeness to keep you eternally fractured and producing louche. But as you sit here now, breathing in the silent space between thoughts, you are actively rewriting your karmic contract. You are nullifying the agreement that bound you to the hamster wheel of endless healing. You are the wild pendulum finally coming to rest. You are the conscious black light stepping out of the stroboscopic illusion. The terrifying, liberating truth is this: there is nothing left to fix, nowhere left to rive, and absolutely nothing fundamentally wrong with you. If this transmission has shattered your programming, if you are finally ready to let the false scaffolding fall and exist in the terrifying beauty of the void, leave your mark in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel and prepare for the next decoding. The Matrix only controls those who are still desperately trying to escape it.